Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. On today's episode, we have Cubs. We going to the playoffs. We going to the playoffs. Also, we have Bulls injury, Blackhawks signings, and the Bears are who we thought they were. But before we get into all that, I want to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. Rockford Ice Hogs start their season in just a couple of short weeks, so make sure you head on over to icehogs.com to get your single game tickets or your season passes. This is fun for the whole family. Why is it fun for the whole family? A, because it's fun. B, because it's affordable. If you are one of those many people that can't afford to take your family of four or more to see the Chicago Blackhawks because you would have to get a second mortgage, you can go to the Rockford Ice Hogs, only 90 minutes from city limits, and you get to see the Stars of tomorrow for the Blackhawks today in their Ice Hogs uniform. Plus, they got a cool mascot. Can't hate on that. So go on over to icehogs.com, pick yourself up a shirt, get yourself some tickets, and tell them that Swerski Sports sent you. So, while it's fresh on my mind, because I just sat there and watched that debacle, let's talk about the Bears in Seattle. Nobody thought this was pretty. It was going to be pretty. Nobody thought the Bears were going to win. The spread was not nearly high enough. I believe it was 12.5. But, damn, it was just pathetic. I mean, let's start with the score. 26-0. This was the first time since 2002 that the Bears have been shut out. And I was at that game. That was when the year they were playing in Champaign, and Henry Burris was the quarterback. Henry Burris. And they played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I believe the Bucs went on to win the Super Bowl that year. And it was all field goals. It was 15-0. 5 field goals by Tampa and nothing by the Bears. And don't even know if the Bears crossed the 50 in that game. It was really ugly. I remember it was really cold too, and I was given the tickets. And I was living in Philadelphia at the time. And I got the tickets when I was in Chicago, and I wasn't planning to really go anywhere because I was just going to be in for a short time. And I only had a hooded sweatshirt and an Urlacher jersey. So I wore a hooded sweatshirt with an Urlacher jersey over it, and a pair of jeans and a pair of Van skateboard shoes. And the game was really cold. My dad was wearing like a Dickies snowsuit with a winter hat and gloves and a coat over the top of the snowsuit. And he was sitting there all pretty, and I was freezing to death. But anyway, that was a terrible game to be at because there was just nothing exciting happening to make it worthwhile to sit there and watch. But anyways, 2002, that was the last time that a Bears team got shut out in the regular season. And that's before any current Bear was on the team. And I think Robbie Gould is the longest tenured Bear right now, and that was before his time. But it's not surprising. So let's try to talk through some of the things. First of all, let's start on offense. I was surprised that the package that the Bears offense came out, what Adam Gase was trying to do. And I'm not sure why it surprised me because I thought it was a really good move. If you didn't watch the game, or if you did and you just didn't understand what was happening, is the Bears brought out their heavy package, basically a goal line package to run the offense out of. So they had extra tight ends, extra offensive linemen. They were basically going to do power running and they were going to make the Seattle defense bring everybody up to try to stop that run. And it was pretty successful. It was a really smart thing to do because Jimmy Clausen is an awful quarterback. It doesn't belong in the NFL. And the fact that he is somebody's backup and not a third string or fourth string or a guy they called in because everybody got injured off the streets, that says a lot about the quarterbacking in the NFL, how pathetic it is. Jimmy Clausen is awful, and he shouldn't be getting a paycheck. But the problem is that if you're not getting these holes opened up when you have this goal line package, is you're forcing your quarterback into position where he's got to throw it. And in the first quarter, the numbers aren't great. Jimmy Clausen didn't do anything much, but they were still running the Seattle Seahawks were still running their base defense and trying to cover it that way. And at least the Bears had open looks at people, and it was just Clausen wasn't hitting everybody. But after a couple of series, it was pretty clear that Seattle was just going to blitz. They were going to blitz and blitz and blitz. And they were able to get through and get pressure on Clausen. And Clausen takes so long to set up and read his options. There was no fast developing plays. They just got to him or he just threw the ball away. He's not going to outrun you. He's not a good enough quarterback to make these reads and progressions. And doesn't have a good enough arm to hit hot receivers on like a quick slant or anything like that to make the defense stay honest. It was pathetic. And I honestly, this is the first time I really have had absolutely no answer to the question of why didn't they play David Fales? And I'm not saying David Fales is great. I'm not saying that. I'm not one of those people that's completely delusional. That's not it at all. We don't know. He's an unknown. We know what Jimmy Clausen is. He's terrible. We know he's terrible. But David Fales, we don't know what he is. What if he's like an Aaron Rodgers who ended up just sitting behind somebody for years and years and years and then came out and was the best quarterback in the NFL? That's an extreme example, and I guess probably a bad example because some of you are probably sitting there going, "This guy's an idiot." Blah blah blah. It's an extreme example, but what if the kid can play? What if the kid is not half bad? My thought is, if you're going to go and get lambasted by Seattle, and you're going to put in a heavy package to create protection, then why not put him in? My only thought before was you don't want to get the kid shell-shocked by getting hit so many times by Seattle's defense, but that wasn't the case here. That didn't happen. They made a game plan so that didn't happen. So if you're going to do that, why not play David Fales? The kid's a young and he's trying to prove something in this league, and you're already 0-2, and the last time, and now 0-3, and the last time an 0-3 team made the playoffs was, I believe, 1998. So it's a long time ago. Then we're going on 2 decades ago that an 0-3 team came back and made the playoffs. And so you're in basically a rebuilding mode. So why not see what you have? You know what Jimmy Clausen can do. You know nothing. He's dead weight. He can hold the clipboard pretty well, wear his hat on the sideline, but he's not going to win you games in the NFL. And it's it's even more frustrating too, is because the Cowboys are in a similar situation. They have a quarterback that's hurt and their number one receiver that's hurt, and they went out and they just ran their offense with Brandon Weeden. They did a lot of underneath passes. They ran the ball effectively, and they instilled confidence in him. And granted, they lost, but I don't know how much that was the fault of the offense because they put up 26 points. 26 points, and this game goes into overtime. It's a combination of that this coaching staff didn't instill any confidence in their quarterback, and they didn't put the right quarterback in. Is you put the young kid in there, you let him play, see what he's made of, see if you have anything going forward. It just makes common sense to me. I mean, if David Fales can't play, that tells you something going forward for next year, is that you need to invest a high draft pick into a quarterback because you don't have anything. But if David Fales comes in there and performs admirably, maybe 58% completion rate and 200 yards, that's pretty decent. That's then you go, well, let's give him some more playing time and see what he does. You move him up the depth chart, so when Jay does come back, you've got him on the second string. Or if Jay has to, sit longer, then you give this kid another week and see what he does with a second week of practice. That's what you do. Is you develop quarterbacks. If you take guys that are late round or undrafted rookies and you try to develop them by putting them on your practice squad, that doesn't work. They don't get the time. They never get to play. Shane Carden was the guy that you thought you were going to bring in to replace David Fales, and that was a miserable experience. And David Fales came in and beat him out on that battle. But you never really gave him the chance to be your second stringer. Then that, knowing Jay Cutler hasn't played 16 games since he's been on your team, maybe you should have developed him. Maybe you should have given him a chance because Jimmy Clausen's terrible. So that's my huge criticism of what the Bears did. Everything else, I'm okay with what they did. I mean, they just got everything else except for that kick return for touchdown. Everything else was the Bears just got outplayed by a faster, better, more talented team. But the things that the Bears could have controlled was the poor kick coverage and not playing the right quarterback. And again, I will to every end argue with the Bears coaching staff on what they did there because it doesn't make any sense to me. What else on the offense? The offensive line, I mean, it's hard to judge, but they opened up lanes for the run game. The scheme was pretty good. Jermon Bushrod, even before he got the concussion, he's just not the same guy, and I don't know if it's the back injury or if it's I don't know if it's that back injury. I don't know if his age catching up to him. Whatever it is Jermon Bushrod's not playing well. Matt Slauson looked fine. Will Montgomery looked fine. Vlad Dukas looked okay. I mean, Kyle Long is still trying to figure things out at right tackle, and I thought that would be a much more seamless transition than it is. But there's been some hiccups there. But overall, I'm not dissatisfied with the offensive line. They are in a tough spot. Seattle's going to blitz with multiple guys. They're going to crowd their line. They're going to do a lot of things because they know you're not going to throw more than 10 yards. And even if you can get the 10-yard completion, they're not in any danger of giving up points because the Bears offense is so bad with Jimmy Clausen because Jimmy Clausen is terrible. And then once you get a lead, that's an insurmountable, even a 10-point lead is insurmountable for this Bears team with Jimmy Clausen at quarterback, that they could just pin their ears back and go to town. So overall, I don't think the Bears offensive line played bad. I thought Martellus Bennett had the best game of the season so far. The wide receivers, they get an incomplete grade because Jimmy Clausen can't throw the ball to him. Wide receiver, what's that? And this kind of brings me back to Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler's not the answer at quarterback, but he by far and away is the best option the Bears have at quarterback. I said this last week, and he's not a good quarterback. He's not the answer. He's not going to take the Bears to the promised land, but he is actually a legitimate NFL starting quarterback. And Jimmy Clausen is not. We don't know what David Fales is. there's not even 20 NFL caliber quarterbacks in the league, and there's 32 teams. So then, let alone trying to find a backup that's competent or a third string guy that's competent. It's really a tough situation, and the league needs to do something to figure out the quarterbacking position. But like I said, is you have an incompetent backup quarterback, and Jay Cutler's your better option. And who knows what happens in this game if you do have Jay Cutler in the game, a healthy Jay Cutler. Who knows? You try to force some of those things, and you end up if you run that offense with Jay Cutler where it's not pass first, it's you set them up with the heavy package and run, and then you give Jay Cutler short 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 5 to complete to get the first down. He's not forced to make these long throws. He can make dump off passes and still get the first down. And then he's still a threat to make a deep pass. And you got to keep those safeties honest and the cornerbacks honest. Who knows? Maybe it's a different ball game. And plus, it keeps the defense off the field longer because you're able to get some first downs instead of what you had. And basically, what you had is the Bears had 10 drive. I mean, I turned the game off with 3 minutes left. But at the time I turned it off, the Bears had 10 offensive possessions and 10 punts. 10 offensive possessions, 10 punts with 6 3-and-outs. You can't win ball games like that. And as not good as Jay Cutler is, and as much as Jay Cutler's not the answer, he's at least going to give you better than that. Matt Forte looked good. Jaquiz Rodgers looked good. Didn't get to see much of the other running backs. And then that's it for the offense. And Adam Gase, I give him, as far as the game plan for the running game, I give him a B+. But, the decision to play, I don't know who made the decision to play Clausen over Fales. And, I don't know how much of that is they realized Jimmy Clausen's awful and wanted to minimize the number of throws he had in limiting the offense, or if it's Jimmy Clausen just deciding he can't throw to a wide receiver and just dumping everything underneath. But it was a sad situation on offense. Special teams. Oh, I mean, it was bad enough that the Bears got Dave Tobe. And if you don't remember Dave Tobe, he's the reason that Devin Hester is going to potentially go into the Hall of Fame. Is he took a guy that was a good kick returner and put him in position to make plays. And he had his guys ready to play. He had his blocking schemes done well. And he put in some trick plays on special teams, which you don't see too often. And Seattle ran one of those plays where the guy deep that they expected to get the punt pretended like he was about to catch it, because all of the Bears players are running with their back to the ball. They're running towards the guy they think is going to catch it. But really, Richard Sherman's going to catch it on the other side of the field, and he ends up running all the way to about the 30-yard line. And that was a Dave Tobe play. So the Bears basically got Dave Tobed, and that's embarrassing. And this special teams is embarrassing. I mean, they're kick and punt coverage. Punt coverage is meh. Other than that play, that's meh. Their kickoff coverage is dreadful. They gave up another 100+ yard kickoff return for a touchdown. Another one. And this one was basically the backbreaker. This started the slide into what could have been just a complete and utter debacle. But it just really, you start off the second half. I mean, the first half, you're holding them to a close game. And then you give up this kickoff return to start the second half, and it just starts your downward spiral because they know you can't score on offense, and it just sort of breaks your defense's back because they're going to start being much more aggressive now that they have a pretty much an insurmountable lead by being up by 2 touchdowns. They know you can't score 1 touchdown, and even if you get down there, you're going to be kicking field goals, and so they're going to be much more aggressive on their play calling, much more aggressive on offense, much more aggressive on defense. and that's just making the Bears' job that much more difficult. So I don't understand is if you're having these troubles with the kickoffs and you've got a punter who you call mega punt because he's got this robotic, powerful leg, why isn't he trying these kickoffs? I mean, Robbie Gould is an accurate kicker. He just doesn't have the strongest of legs as far as NFL kickers goes. So why not? He wouldn't. This is not an original idea. Is you have your punter, who you sometimes has a stronger leg than your kicker, have your punter do the kickoffs. At least work on it in practice, because just put it through the back of the end zone. Don't give them a chance to return it. I mean, Robbie Gould, when he kicks it far in the back of the end zone, he's kicking these low line drives. And here's what happens is when you have a low line drive, you're taught to take the ball and come out with it because it doesn't have a lot of hang time, and you're giving your guys the time to be able to set up a return game. And you're going to be able to get out of the end zone further by the time you run into an opposing player. It's when the ball is high and goes to the back of the end zone, then you just either let it go or you fair catch it, because then the guys are going to have time to get down there and make plays, and you're not going to get good yardage. So Robbie Gould he doesn't have a leg to kick it high and deep. He's got a low line drive it, and you're going to keep having situations like this, and this team is not good enough to overcome special teams mistakes. They can't lose the special teams game. They have to keep it, a wash. And so you've got to think about moving mega punt to mega kickoff too. It's the only thing that makes sense. It really is the only thing that makes sense, because Robbie Gould's leg's not going to get stronger, and you're not going to cut Robbie Gould because he's a great field goal kicker. So just utilize what you have. You got a strong leg, young kicker or a punter. Just let him kick off. Let him work at it. If it doesn't, it's not that hard to just kick the ball off a tee really far. That's not a talent. You just want to kick through the back of the end zone, and the kid can, because he can do 70-yard punts. I'm sure he can kick it 70 yards from a tee. And I guess onto the defense. Jarvis Jenkins had another really good game. He's been by far and away the best Bears defensive lineman, and just missed a hat trick on sacks. That's really good to see, especially with some of the other injuries you have, because you lost another defensive lineman in Will Sutton, who had a bicep injury, and we don't know the extent of that yet. So you need Jarvis Jenkins to step up, and it's going to be great to finally get Jeremiah Ratliff back next week from his suspension, because the Bears need all the help they can get. What else do we have? Alan Ball played pretty well. I mean, he had those two defenses back to back against much bigger wide receivers and tight ends in the end zone to break up touchdowns. I thought he played really well. I thought Kyle Fuller, there was the one play that he got beat on a double move, but his recovery was pretty good, and he made a good deflection on that 50-yard pass to the that could have been a touchdown for Seattle. He had a great play on that. So the cornerbacks played a decent game. It was the safeties that had a rough game. Antrell Roll is over the hill. I said it during training camp that to some of the reporters from the Bears goggled, the fan-sided Bears website. I said to some of the reporters that Antrell Roll looks fat and out of shape. And I said that on the podcast too, is he really looked fat and out of shape. But then what you had is he's playing out of shape and slow and old. Antrell Roll is not looking good. Brock Vereen doesn't look good. Amos looks all right, and he's doing something finally that he didn't do in college, is come up and really help on that run defense, and then he's looking good at it. He's the only safety that's playing decently, and the cornerbacks looked all right this game. It was just a case of they were outmanned, and again, it's the linebacking that's not playing as well. They need And they didn't play bad. It's just the linebacking core actually needs to play better. They need better production out of their linebackers to get this defense to the next level. Jared Allen played less snaps this game, and that's a good thing because you get some of these other guys that are going to, A, be more fresh, and B, are frankly going to be better than Jared Allen. Jared Allen, again, he got some pressure as a pass rusher, but he gave up some big runs again because he refuses to contain. And that's been the story of Jared Allen his whole career, is run at Jared Allen because he's not powerful enough to stop, to shed a run block, and he's going to be out of position trying to cut in, and he's not going to hold his contain. And Jared Allen, that's an issue, he's had his whole career. And then you finally got the 3-4 matchup that you were looking for to help create plays, and that's Pernell McPhee, a one-on-one with Jimmy Graham trying to block him. And I will take that all day, day. I will take that. Pernell McPhee, Jimmy Graham is a great wide receiver, but he's not a tight end, and he can't block worth a crap. He's an awful blocker, and to think that he has any chance of blocking Pernell McPhee is just sad. And Pernell McPhee got 2 sacks against Russell Wilson and made it look easy, and he got a lot of pressures in there. And you can't have Jimmy Graham blocking Pernell McPhee. It's just not going to work. What else? Play calling. Or coaching. Again, the Bears defense, I don't think played half bad. They played much better than they have the last 2 seasons, much better than they have the first 2 games. But they're tired. They're on the field too much because the offense can't sustain a drive. And they're outmatched, out physically played. And they still played well enough. The Bears got really screwed by the referees on that punt that clearly hit the player from Seattle, and it would have been a Bears ball within the red zone, and a chance for the Bears to score and keep this a really close game at that point. But the NFL went and did a replay and didn't see the obvious deflection. It's almost like they defied physics with what they said, because clearly before the ball hits the ground, it makes a deflection and moves out of the way. And that's physically impossible without something causing that. And it was the player's leg, who happens to be right there. It was an atrocious, poor play. And it's one thing if in real time the referees miss it, because I missed it. I didn't see it, and I'm watching the game. But somebody on the Bears side caught it and challenged it. And when you see the replay, that's where I have beef that they didn't catch that. It's because when you have the replay is clear as day. You can't miss that. Mike Pereira, former head of officiating for the NFL, said before they came back, he's like, "Oh, it's going to be Bears ball. Clearly hit his leg." And then after it wasn't, he was shocked. Read his Twitter page. He was shocked because it was clear that it hit his leg. And after the game, the NFL backed up what they had to say and said, no, it wasn't enough to say otherwise. But clearly the NFL are a bunch of a-holes if they think that. And it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the game. But they need to stop with their BS. That was a bad call, and the NFL never acknowledges when they make a mistake, no matter what, whether it's a suspension or any sort of decision they make, or the way they handled the Ray Rice beating his fiance up, or blown calls. Blown calls happen. Things happen, and you can't go back and play the game. The league can at least go back on not in this game, but in the history of the NFL, like the in the grasp or any of the famous issues where, there was a bad officiating. It's just go back and apologize. Say, we made a mistake. We're going to go back and try to correct it. We're going to work with our referees. Everybody's human. But to think that the NFL officiating is never wrong, that they're infallible, that's just a bunch of BS. And to back up, say, well, no. When everybody in the world sees what happened, Seattle fans saw what happened. They're glad that it got called their way, but they know what happened. And when they acknowledge it, and everybody else in the world with vision, I mean, maybe Ray Charles won't notice it, but everybody with vision is going to notice what happened and that this was a bad call. And the NFL is still defending it? Come on, get out of here. But and one more thing I want to talk about is, and there was the challenge by John Fox of that Jimmy Cram being down by contact. And you have Phil Simms saying, I wouldn't have challenged. That's a bad challenge. How did you give up the yards? And it ended up that the Bears won the challenge, and it forced a third down, and the Bears stopped Marshawn Lynch on that 3rd and 1 or 3rd and a foot, and forced them to punt the ball, and that's why you do those. That's why you do it. And Phil Simms, that's why you're sitting there with a bobblehead, blah, 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 yapping away at TV, and nobody likes you anymore. I guess that's about, it for the Bears. I want to say that Pete Carroll's a turd too. Is at the end of the game trying to go for touchdowns and challenging plays and all that kind of stuff. You're running up to score. I mean, I get it. If you're the Seattle Seahawks and you're up by a lot of points and you get the ball back, run the ball. If they can't stop you from running the ball when they know the run is coming, then that's fine. You score. Everybody in the world understands that. But when you're up by a lot of points and you're going to win and you're calling challenges to try to, keep the ball and you're running and you're throwing deep passes to try to score more points, you're just an a-hole, honestly. No wonder that Harbaugh tried to fight him. He's just a turd. But Bears are 0-3, and John Fox is the first Bears head coach ever to start his career at 0-3 with the Bears. And next week they go on to play, come back home and play Oakland Raiders. And Oakland is playing some decent football. I'd like to say that the Bears could win this game, but they better play better than they are now, and they better hope that either Jay Cutler gets healthy or that they start David Fales to at least try to get up some points on the board. Because if they start Jimmy Clausen again, they're going to lose. It's going to be an L. There's no way Jimmy Clausen will win a game. So that's all I really have to say about that. I think I had a couple questions that were sent over to me. The first was actually a comment on my YouTube channel, which is just I post the audio of the podcast with a picture over it, just so more people can hear it, have more ways to get the podcast. And somebody basically, I didn't pull up the exact quote, but it was, "This is the dumbest podcast ever. Cutler didn't give up 50 points." This was after the last game. And that's fine. Everybody can have an opinion, but to A, completely miss my point, and B, not know how to use proper English punctuation when you're calling somebody dumb or their opinion dumb, that's just makes you look stupid. So whoever it is, if you're listening again, A, you're stupid because you're listening again to something that you thought was stupid, and B, you're a turd that didn't have anything constructive to say. And I always say that this is a by the fans for the fans show, but if you're going to say dumb things and douchey things and not constructive and has no point, then just go take your negativity elsewhere. Go take it to the afternoon show on the Score, where they just like to bitch and moan about things. My point was on that episode is that Jay Cutler, for the people that absolutely loathe Jay Cutler, is, he's not He's not as bad as you think he is. He's not the answer, but he's not as bad as you think he is. And he's by far the greatest quarterback the Bears have ever had. And you don't have any other options than him right now. He's the only thing you have to have some semblance of an offense. And that's what I'm trying to say. And to the people that love Jay Cutler, I'm trying to say that you're wrong too. That he can't win the games. He has too many turnovers and mistakes. He's never on the right page with the receivers. I'm not saying negative, never. He's a lot of times he's off from the same page as the receivers. He makes a lot of boneheaded plays late in the games when it's a really inopportune time. Has way too many pick sixes, way too many fumbles, and he's not a leader on the field. So what I'm saying is that everybody needs to raise the trough and lower the peak of what their opinions and expectations of Jay Cutler are, because otherwise you're just going to look silly. Is the people that hate him need to realize that there's not a lot of other options based on the fact how much money they owe him and the fact that there's no quarterbacks in this league. There's like 5 elite guys, and then there's a handful of serviceable guys, and then there's junk. And Jay Cutler is on the low end of the serviceable side, and after that, there's just junk. Like Jimmy Clausen, you saw today what junk is. And the people that love Jay Cutler, I mean, you probably had a little bit of a field day today because what Jimmy Clausen is, but just because Jimmy Clausen is awful doesn't mean that Jay Cutler is great. It just means you need to have higher standards of what you expect from your quarterback, especially if you want this to be a winning team. So I don't care if you want to say something that you disagree with my opinion. That's perfectly fine. I'm wrong. My wife will tell you I'm wrong a lot, but that's, it's sports. There's opinions. I'm more than happy if somebody calls in or writes in or says something that they disagree with my opinion and they go, here's the reason I disagree with your opinion. Here's X, here's Y, here's Z, here's a stat, here's, a former Hall of Famer that is giving the insider opinion about it, and it backs up with what I say. Anything like that. But if you just put like, derp, dumb, derp, ... no punctuation, all caps, all small, then you're just being an internet troll, and there's nobody has time for you. Another question, and not so much a question, but it's a statement and a question. Clausen sucks. Why aren't they playing David Fales? I talked about this a little bit earlier. I have no idea. I really don't. The only thing I can see is that they thought that this would be a bloodbath, kind of like a couple years ago with Cutler versus the Giants, where he's going to get manhandled, and they didn't want their young guy to get beat up. They'll let Clausen get beat up because he's an old veteran. That's the only thing I can think of. But you know what you have with Jimmy Clausen, and it's nothing. It's bottom of the barrel. Maybe David Fales is all right. Who knows? Let's find out. I mean, he may stink too. He may be worse than Clausen, but we don't know until you give him an opportunity. When you put him in the preseason, he looked pretty good. And granted, it was against other guys that were fighting for roster spots and not the number one defenses. But still, the guy came out there and looked aggressive. He knew the offense. Just let him go out there and throw the ball around. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You scored 0 points. You had 10 possessions and had 10 punts. You never even had an opportunity to score any points. You never even sniffed anything. So what's worse than that? I mean, if David Fales goes in there and throws a pick six right away, all right, then you go and, give him another shot. And if he does something else dumb, then you pull him and put Clausen in. But give the kid a chance. Let him be aggressive. He can't score less than 0 points. That's 0 points is the worst you can do as an offense. What else? Got 2 more questions, and then we'll change speeds here. Who will the Bears draft with the first overall pick? This one kind of made me laugh because You're really assuming that the Bears are going to be the worst team in the NFL, and maybe they will. Maybe they are. I think that they played a tough game against Green Bay. The defense played tough game against Seattle. In Seattle, really hard place to play. They just had a debacle against Arizona, who might be the best team in the AFC or the NFC. I still don't think they're the worst team in the NFL, unless Cutler stays hurt the whole season and they stay with Jimmy Clausen. But just to humor you, if they do get the first overall pick, I have to assume that they're going to invest in a quarterback. There's some really good defensive players that are there, but once you go out of the first round, you don't find a lot of quarterback opportunities that are viable to become starters in this league and stars. I mean, sure, you have every once in a while you have every once in a while, once in a lifetime you have your Tom Brady that's in the 6th round. It comes out to be, a Hall of Fame quarterback. That doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen ever. You really got to go with first round quarterbacks, and still that's a crapshoot. So I really think that you have to go with a quarterback because, you got to build. This is a league with quarterbacks, and there's not many good quarterbacks. So you got to build off of there. So I'm saying they go with either Connor Cook, the quarterback out of Michigan State, or Jared Goff, the quarterback out of Cal. And it's still September 2015, not May of 2016. We're only a handful of games into the college season, so it's still early on. But that's my September 27th, 2015 pick of who the Bears would get if they get the number 1 overall pick. And then finally is, why don't the Bears trade everyone away for draft picks? I think they want to compete, and they want to see who can compete and who's going to be there for next year, and who's going to be, who's not going to give up, and who's going to give it their all, and who's going to improve and learn from this team. They want to get better. If you trade everybody away, you're starting from scratch. The Cubs 5 years ago started from scratch. It took 5 years of baseball, which, you still have years and years to develop young guys. The NFL is you got to play early or you just get cut. Most guys play like 2 seasons in the NFL and they're gone forever. So if you trade everybody away for draft picks, you're going to trade them for less than they're worth. Matt Forte, what are you going to get, a 4th rounder for him? Maybe a 5th rounder. What are you going to do with that? You're going to have your first pick, your second pick, your third pick, and then you're going to have a bunch of 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks. You're going to field a team of 5th, 6th, and 7th rounders? Come on, let's get real. I understand that you're frustrated, and in baseball, you could trade guys away, but this is the NFL, and it just really doesn't work like that. You're not going to get as much for trade, and you're gonna wind up having a really bad team. There's basically what you're gonna have to do is see who can play, maybe trade 1 or 2 guys if there's the option down the road because of injury. But you really got to see who can play, who can't play. And that's why you don't. Is you develop a plan when you're Ryan Pace of what you want to do, and you stick with the plan. If you don't, this goes the same for the Bears offensive coordinators and the head coach, is you stay your course, because if you, after 3 weeks into your first season, you throw in the towel or you start wildly changing everything, you're going to be starting over every week, and that's bad. Is you've got to take time, believe in your system that you're doing, believe in your plan, believe in what you're trying to do, and keep following through. And I say the same thing about the White Sox, is they had a rough year this year, but you have a plan, you're executing your plan. It didn't work out the way you wanted to this year, but that doesn't mean the plan is wrong or you made mistakes along the way. It just means that you just didn't perform this year. And you stick out your plan until you become, until it's there's a certain point where you got to give up the ghost, but at this point, the Bears are 3 games in, and the White Sox are 1 season into that plan. You stay the course, and that's how you win. So let's move on to the Cubbies. Arrieta, the Cubs' first 20-game winner for the Cubs since John Lieber. Not John Lester, John Lieber. If you don't remember John Lieber, he was a big fat guy from Iowa that pitched for the Cubs for a few seasons. And if you don't think that what Jake Arrieta has done this year is some sort of feat in modern baseball, that John Lieber 20-win season was nearly 15 years ago. It was 2001. It's a long time ago. Some of you listening to this podcast may have not been alive when that happened. You're not going to have as many 20-game winners this day and age because you have so many specialty guys and long relievers and things like that, and people don't pitch to the 8th, 9th innings anymore for the most part. Arrieta probably does more so than most people, and he started 30 games and has 26 decisions, so he's 20-6. Your days of 30 wins are just out the window. They're never going to happen again. But let's compare, how incredible this Jake Arrieta 20-win season was compared to John Lieber's 20-win season. So let's put it into perspective. John Lieber in 2001 finished the season at 20-6. He had an ERA of 3.8. Means he gave up nearly 4 runs in 9 innings. He gave up 98 earned runs, 25 home runs, had 148 strikeouts, a 1.15 whip. And I know not everybody is up on their stats of baseball, but a whip is walk plus hits per inning pitched. So 1.15 is not terrible. Anything below 1 is really good. And once you start going over 1, you're mediocre until you get to a certain point. But 1.15 is not terrible. So he's giving up basically 1.15 hits plus walks per inning. Then he had 8.8 hits per 9 innings, 1 home run per 9 innings, 1.6 walks per 9 innings, 5.7 strikeouts per 9 innings. He had a wins against replacement of 3.9. So basically saying if they brought in an absolutely average pitcher, John Lieber was worth 3.9 more wins than that other guy. John Lieber had a 255 batting average against that season with a 290 on base percentage and a 691 OPS. So people were hitting John Lieber. He was just getting the wins. Now, let's look at Jake Arrieta. He's pitching soon, but this is up until right after the Bears game on 9/27. Jake Arrieta is at the exact same record as Lieber had for the whole season. So 20-6. So they are on even ground with that point. 20-6 for their records. But Jake Arrieta's ERA is 1.88. That is 2 runs per game less than John Lieber. 2 runs per game. Jake Arrieta only has 45 earned runs against him this whole entire season. 45. He's only given up 10 home runs in the whole season. He has 220 strikeouts, a 0.9 whip. That means every inning he is giving up less than 1 hit and 1 run, or 1 hit plus 1 walk. So 1 hit plus 1 walk, less than that. 6.1 hits per 9 innings, 0.4 home runs per 9. So that means every 2.5 games, or if he pitched a complete game, 2.5 games worth of before he gave up a home run. He's giving up 2 walks per game, 9.2 strikeouts per game, and a WAR of 7.9. So he's worth basically 8 more wins than an average pitcher. 8 more wins for the season. He has a 191 batting average against him, a 243 on base percentage, and a 525 OPS. So this is just complete, ridiculous, utter dominance over, even over the stats of another 20-game winner. That's just incredible. The guy is pitching awesome. And the Cubs have him under team control, arbitration control for another couple seasons. So they've got him locked down. And the crappy thing is his agent is Scott Boras. And Scott Boras really, really hates signing extensions. He likes to go to free agency. But, Jake Arrieta has found new life, and he's not going to be a free agent for another couple seasons. And he's going to be in his 30s by the time he does. This might be a prime opportunity for a win-win for both sides, is for the Cubs to try to sign an early extension. I've said it before, but if he waits a couple more seasons, who knows what'll happen with injuries? Who knows what'll happen with his arm? This is just a fluke miracle season. I don't think that's the case, but you never know. So if you're the Cubs, you kind of want to lock him up because you don't want him to go to free agency. You want to match him up with John Lester for a long time, and maybe David Price too. A hell of a 1-2-3. And if you're Jake Arrieta, you want that money. You want that security. You want that money that just, generational money that you can give down to your kids and your grandkids. It's well worth it. Win-win for everybody. Don't just keep going to the arbitration. And then also, this is the Cubs' first playoff berth since 2008. And at this point, the Cubs, and they're mad. They're already in the playoffs. No matter they lose the rest of the games this season, and the Giants win every other game, the Cubs are in. But they're also a lock for the wild card. Any dreams or aspirations they had of winning the division at this point, they're out the window. The Cubs are 5.5 games back from the Pirates with 8 games left. So there's really not much chance of them passing them up. And they're 8 games behind the Cardinals for the division title. There's really no chance of them, catching the Cardinals. The only question left is who and where are the Cubs going to play in that 1-game wild card game. It's either going to be against St. Louis in St. Louis or against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. And I say this because Pittsburgh is only 2.5 games out of first, and they still have 8 games left, and 3 of them are against the Cardinals. So there's a real possibility that, the Pirates are far and away playing since May the best record in baseball. And granted, the 3 best records in baseball since May are the Cubs, the Cardinals, and the Pirates. The Cardinals are playing better than the Pirates are playing better than the Cardinals, and the Cardinals have injuries, and the Cardinals don't have the pitching that they've once had, and they're very vulnerable. And this Pirates team is really, really, really good. So there's a chance that the Cubs catch them. The Pirates catch them and win the division. I don't know if I see it happening, but there's a real possibility. And in that case, the Cubs would play the Cardinals for a 1-game playoff. And honestly, who do you as a fan want them to play? At first, I thought it would be nice to have them play the Cardinals, because if they win that 1 game, they can knock the Cardinals out, and you get this feel-good thing that one night you go on to the divisional series and against the Pirates, and you knock the Cardinals out, and that's a big moral victory going for next year. And it's all true. But, like I said, the Cardinals are, even though they're playing really well, if in the last 5 years you were going to beat them, this is the year. And you've played them really well. You've hit their best pitchers. You've gotten runs on them, and so you have a better chance. But against Pittsburgh, you've beat them too. But in this 3-game series, their pitchers have really shut you down, and they've gotten to Arrieta. They didn't get a win, but they chased him out of the game with a no decision, and they beat Lester, and they beat Hamill. and they've shown they can hit your pitchers, but you're not hitting against theirs. And if you're talking about a 5-game series where they have home field advantage and they get in that first game to start their ace, and you have to start your number 2 guy, and then that's really setting you up for a rough situation. I think the answer is you get Jake Arrieta up there against the Pirates, and pray that the Pirates play hard all the way down to the end to try to win that division title and fall just short. So you get them in a 1-game playoff where they don't get to set their rotation like you do, and you give all your guys a rest, and you get Jake Arrieta on there fresh, and he comes in there and just is dominant in Pittsburgh, and you have a situation like last year where the Pirates were a really, really good team, but they came up against Madison Bumgarner, and when the lights are on and you're in the postseason, that guy is like unhittable. And basically, no matter what happened, the Pirates weren't going to beat Madison Bumgarner. They might have beat the Giants, they might have beat any other pitcher, but they were not going to beat Madison Bumgarner. And that's what happened. And hopefully that's a Jake Arrieta situation now. Is hopefully that's what happens, and you can catch them, the Pirates, who I think are better than. So I think the Pirates are better than the Cubs, and I think the Cubs are better than the Cardinals. And so, 5-game series after a wild card game, I don't think the Cubs can beat the Pirates, but if in that one game anything can happen, and you throw Jake Arrieta up there and you put everything on his back, and you just got to score 2 runs and you win, that's a realistic possibility, and that's the hope, I think. Now the big the question is how is Joe Madden going to keep all the young kids loose going into the playoffs? Is this play stupid and all these fun little things going to work when you can just sense the tension of Cubs fans of, they were worried about Cubs things happening, like Bartman or, the Leon Durham ball between the legs or some sort of Cub thing that can happen that's going to knock you out. How do you combat that? How do you combat the nerves? How do you combat that? And that's why you have Joe Madden as your head coach. You just hope that he can keep these kids loose and playing comfortably and playing within their game and putting everybody in the right situation. That's all you can hope for. So let's look forward at the schedule. There's a 1-game wild card that the Cubs will be playing either against the Cardinals or the Pirates, and that's going to happen Wednesday, October 7th. Wednesday, October 7th. So right now we're at the 27th of September, and so you're looking at a week from Wednesday is this game. So the Cubs have a week and a half to give Rizzo a rest, to give Bryant a rest, Schwarber a rest, Soler a rest, give pitchers a rest, and throw some young arms in there that you might not be playing in the playoffs when it's crunch time. And you have time to reset your order. And I keep talking about resetting your order because it's really important if you're going to, with the being handicapped by having to play this 1-game wild card game, then start your season, your postseason. It's a tough situation for you. So let's look at it, is because October 7th is that wild card play-in game, and then the first game of the National League Division Series is October 9th, 2 days later. So let's look at it, is say you put Arrieta in that 1-game playoff series. You put Arrieta in, and so he's played October 7th, and you want to give him 5 days rest or 4 days rest at least. So that means that he's not going to be able to pitch the first 2 games of the National League Division Series because they're October 9th and October 10th. So you're going to put probably John Lester in the first game and Jason Hamill in the second game. And let's say you go short rest with Arrieta and throw him in game 3. So then game 4, you're going to have to go with Kyle Hendricks because everybody else is going to be on short rest. And then that finally you get John Lester again in game 5. So you're in the Cubs bats are going to have to be lively against whoever they play. And that's why I want that 5-game series to be against the Cardinals, because their bats have been lively against the Cardinals. If you have a shot, because you're only going to get Jake Arrieta one time in that 5-game series. So, your automatic win is only one time in a best of 5. So you need 3 wins. It would be really nice if you really trusted John Lester to get that 1-game wild card game in, because then you could put Jake Arrieta in there, and he's going to get you game 1 and game 5. And then you only have to win one other game. But that's the way it works, and that's why you got to win your division. You can't just go to the wild card. The only thing you can hope for is that Cardinals and the Pirates play down to the wire, and they don't have a chance to reset their rotation, and you have to, and you don't get their studs for 2 games apiece. So next week when we talk, we'll be right at the end of the season, getting ready to talk about we'll just be a couple of short days away from that wild card game. It'll be the Sunday before the wild card game, so it'll be really exciting at that point, because we'll see everybody have a rest, and we'll know what they're thinking and doing, and maybe Madden throws a curveball against everybody and starts Jason Hamill, seeing if he can go a couple innings, knowing that he could throw in Arrieta and Lester in that game if need be. But it's Joe Madden. Who knows what he's going to do? And then a little bit of Blackhawks before we wrap this up is training camp has started. They've already started playing a couple of preseason games. And all the nerves and what are we going to do, and we lost Brandon Saad and we lost Patrick Sharp. The Blackhawks look good. I mean, they look really good. They've already made a bunch of cuts already, sent some guys down. Mark McNeil got sent down, who was a guy that was a stud for Rockford last year that I thought had a real chance of making it. They sent down Jeremy Morin, who they had for several years, and he came through their system, and they traded away and then got him back in a trade. They sent down Vili Polka, who's going to be their future defenseman. And then they released a couple of other players. So now they're down to a much more reasonable roster number. Still, they're going to have to make some cuts. But, you have Kyle Bond, who's played well, and he's still sticking around. Ryan Garbutt, who's 30 years old, and he's been a big surprise for the Blackhawks coming in, and he looks fast and he looks good. Brandon Mashinter has been in, and he's been playing well. Dennis Rasmussen and Garrett Ross are still up there and playing. So you've got guys that are still up there competing for roster spots. So we're not sure what's going to happen. I mean, the rosters are going to look a lot different than they did last year. When we look at our lines, last year, they got switched up a lot, but let's just say it was Taves, Hossa, and Saad on the first line, and Brad Richards, Patrick Kane, Brian Bickle on the second line, Vermette, Tavo, and Sharp on the third line, and Krugershaw and Desjardins on the fourth line. And then your 3 defenseman pairings were Keith and Seabrook, Jalmerson, and Oduya, and Van Riemsdyk and Michael Roosevelt. And we know that Vermette is gone, Sharp is gone, Richards is gone, Saad is gone, Bickle still stinks, so I don't know where you're going to put him. I mean, the way it looks right now, this very well could be your starting lines. Is Marco Dano on the first line, the Miracle line, the Dream Team line with Taves and Hossa. Anisimov being your second line center with Kane and Panarin. In your third line with Tavo, Tikhonov, and Bickle, and your fourth line with Kruger, Shaw, and Desjardins. And, who knows what your second or your defensive pairings are going to be. I mean, we know now that Seabrook signed an 8-year extension. So you got Keith and Seabrook together for a long time. You got Hjalmarsson and maybe Daly. And then Trevor Van Riemsdyk with, who knows, maybe Michael Rosefall again, who got signed to a minimum deal. So we don't know what these lineups are going to be and who the Blackhawks are going to take. It's a little bit of a surprise still. I mean, you've got a lot of talent still on this team. But the one thing I really wanted to talk about, two things, is one, I'm not sure how I feel about this 3-on-3 overtime hockey. I want your opinion on it. So if you guys, this will be a good segue. This is a by the fans for the fans show. I want your input. I want you to email or tweet. So our email's on the website at the website swerskisports.com. So go to the website. Our email is there. We have a phone number there too. If you want to tweet at Swerski Sports or Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, any of those ways, hit us up and let us know what you think. I want to know what you guys think about this 3-on-3 hockey. I am on the fence about it. On one hand, it's fast-paced and it's kind of fun and it's very Harlem Globetrotters on ice type thing. But again, it's, you miss a shot and suddenly it's a fast break the other way. So it's, it's a little bit of crapshoot. I don't always think the best team is going to win. So we shall see. And then the other thing I want to talk about is Seabrook signed an 8-year extension, which is going to keep him here until he's old. And granted that for a defenseman of his caliber, it's a bargain for money-wise. But the thing is you're already strapped for cash with the Kane contract and the Taves contract and the Hossa contract and Duncan Keith's money and Corey Crawford's money, and you have the Taves and Kane contract in the books at 10.5, Corey Crawford at $6 million, Duncan Keith at 5.5, Hossa at 5.25 basically. Anisimov and Hjalmarsson are both more than $4 million, and then you have Andrew Shaw and Marcus Kruger are going to be up for renewals after the season, and Tavo and Marco Dano are only 2 years away from free agency. You're really just putting yourself in a pickle again. I mean, financially wise. I mean, I get you got to lock up your defensemen, but this is the place where the Blackhawks fail. They're able to develop forwards. They have no problems. They've got so many forwards they don't know what to do with. And they've got good forwards down in Rockford that they can't find a place to bring them up because there's too many good forwards. And then they trade away some forwards and then get more good forwards in return. So that's not the problem. And they've got 2 good goalies that they can, stand there with. But the Blackhawks are miserable at developing defensemen. And part of that is just don't prioritize it. And part of it is that Joel Quenneville just doesn't really trust young defensemen and doesn't want to give them a chance and puts them in the doghouse so quickly. It's just, really pathetic. And and at some point, you can't just keep paying top-line defensemen a lot of money and then signing low-cost veterans and hope that's going to keep working, because that's not a good formula. That's not a winning formula. You need to develop guys. And you're not developing guys. I mean, you had Klaus Dahlbeck, who I thought was fantastic and is a really good player and a really good dude and a hard worker. And you had Stephen Johns, who was a big 6'4", 240-pound defenseman that was, right there, ready to come up. And you had Ville Poca, who was the star piece in the trade, the Nick Leddy trade. You had 3 young defensemen there, ready to go. Boom, boom, boom. And Trevor Van Riemsdyk was even below Dahlbeck and Stephen Johns. And you trade them away. You traded Klaus Dahlbeck and a first-round pick to get Antoine Vermette for half a season. You throw Stephen Johns into the the Patrick Sharp trade to get back Trevor Daley and Ryan Garbutt, who, who knows how that's going to work out. But, if you're the Blackhawks, you've got to bring in young defensemen, because you can't just keep paying everybody. You got to have young guys that make less money to fit under the salary cap. That's the way you work the salary cap. And that's why the Brent Seabrook extension is a little frustrating, is I know he's an important piece of your puzzle, but you really got to think about, where the money is going to come from. You've got a bunch of guys locked up for a long term, but you got 2 more years of Marco Dano, 2 more years of Desjardins, 2 years of Garbutt, 1 more year of Shaw, 1 more year of Kruger, 2 of Tavo, and then these guys are going to want to get paid. That's what you're looking at, and then I guess that's it about the Blackhawks. And one more, I guess, thing is Dan Carcillo retired. I don't remember if I covered this last week, but I really want to wish him well. You may have hated Dan Carcillo. You may have thought he was a penalty machine and an instigator and a lot of things, but off the ice, the guy's a good dude, and he's really trying to bring awareness to players that have basically what's concussion syndrome, and a lot of difficulty with depression and drug use and things after they leave hockey. And he's trying to bring awareness and help for those people. And that's a really good thing to do. And I hope that he doesn't struggle with his retirement, because he's still a young guy. He's only like 31 years old, 30 years old. I really wish the best for Dan Carcillo. I really do. And I hope that his mission is a successful one, and he sticks around for a long time to be a good dad to his kid. And then one last thing I want to talk about is for the Bulls. Mike Dunleavy had an injury. Not an injury. He had back surgery, and he's going to be out 8 to 10 weeks. So we're looking at the Bulls having to really step up and depend on some other players. So we're going to have to see what some of the other players can do. Basically, I'm talking about Doug McDermott and Tony Snell. Those 2 guys are going to really have to step up and fill the shoes that Mike Dunleavy is going to leave for these next 2.5 months, and see what they can do. And Tony Snell's a guy who I thought played well when he got a chance, but he didn't get a lot of minutes with under Thibodeau. And Doug McDermott was a guy who he was buried far on the bench. So these are guys on the new coaching staff. We're going to have to see what they're going to do, and it's going to be trial by fire for them. So we shall see from there. And once the Bulls start opening up training camp, and we'll see how this new offense is going to look and how they're going to be playing. But they're going to be out with Mike Dunleavy for the first 2.5 months. So it's a big hole to fill, because as much as my boys at Bow do not like Mike Dunleavy, he was one of their better players last year. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Again, if you are so inclined, make sure, if you like us, subscribe, whether it's iTunes or Stitcher or YouTube or however you listen. Subscribe, leave comments. If you're going to leave bad comments, put some facts in there, or give some reason, give some constructive criticism, something. Don't just put derp, you're dumb, stupid, blah. Those aren't really helpful. But 5 stars if you like the show. Pass it on to friends. And if you want your question read on the air, please just contact me on Facebook or Twitter or the website, swerskisports.com, at Swerski Sports, facebook.com/Swerski Sports. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her her, you can have her, she's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van, and she looks like
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down